A college werewolf student, Claire, finds herself entangled in a deep emotional struggle with Kieran, while being drawn into a mystery involving betrayal and power struggles. What are Daniel's and Axel's plans now that they have joined forces? Can Claire escape their grasp and uncover the truth lurking behind the scenes? Unlock the secret life of a werewolf college student. Subscribe now for exclusive insights. Chapter 18. I woke with a stirring that was very unfamiliar to me. My chest heaving from my heavy breaths and my body drenched in sweat. I sat up in bed quickly, trying to regain my breath. The room was dark, but with my werewolf sight I was still able to see somewhat. I reached for the lamp on the nightstand and switched it on. With my arm I wiped away the residue that had formed on my head and looked to the body rising and falling soundly beside me. Kieran seemed to be completely at rest while my mind was still reeling from my dream. It was so vivid I could recall every touch and tingle on my body. His hot breath on my skin, the little love bites. My thoughts at me like a ton of bricks. Even in my just awoken state I still yearned for him. I began to panic. I knew I needed to get away from him before something really bad happened that I could never take back. I mentally wasn't ready to mate my mate, but my body was saying something completely different. I was in turmoil with myself. I forced myself to the bathroom, fighting the pull I had to Kieran. Every part of me wanted to run back to him, but I couldn't allow myself to do that. Closing the bathroom door, I slid down to the floor and brought my knees to my chest. I rested my head against them. What am I going to do? I thought. My wolf needed her mate, and she was driving me crazy. My eyes drifted to the shower and an idea hit me. Don't people normally take showers where they are in similar situations like mine and can't do anything about it? It was supposed to kill the need. Well, it certainly wouldn't hurt to find out. After the shower I wasn't any better off than I was before. I was wet and cold and still wanted my mate. Nothing was going to help me here. If only I had a distraction. Again the pull worsened and it nearly dragged me to the door. Desire coursed through me and my body tingled everywhere. I froze when a knock came to the door. Kieran was awake. Claire? He called. Are you okay? His voice sounded strained and it puzzled me. Was something wrong with him too? Why, yeah, I'm fine. I was just taking a shower. His voice revealed his puzzlement. At 2 a.m. He knew something was up and I didn't know how to respond. There wasn't a good enough reason for why I had locked myself up in the bathroom to escape him. After a short silence he spoke up again, this time with a stronger tone. You had the dream, didn't you? He knew about the dream. How? I had it too, he added, answering my unspoken question. Oh? Then he knew exactly what was bothering me down to every last detail. Is that normal? I asked, trying to keep my voice from giving away how I felt. Yes. It's our wolves. It starts with the dream and then they start controlling our thoughts. It only gets worse until we complete the mating process. It's the last thing that happens before our wolves give in to each other. I swallowed. The last thing. A burning coming from my mark offered a brief distraction from our situation. I gasped and covered it with my hand. A whimper escaped my lips. What's happening? The mark, it hurts. That's what happens when you start denying your wolf of what she needs. It's like a consequence in a way. So she was also working against me. Wasn't anyone on my side? Come out so I can help you, he said. I took a step back. I'm not so sure that's a great idea given the circumstances. I cried out in pain again, at the painful burn on my collarbone. It felt worse than the one before. Claire, you're only hurting yourself. I can make it better. I wasn't sure I would like what he had to say, but I was willing to hear him out. How? My presence will ease the pain, he answered. And the need. He paused for a long minute before replying. It will continue. So it was hopeless. One way or another we were going to mate. Fate would see to that. There was no fighting it, and no way avoiding it this time. I had ran from the inevitable for too long, and it had come back to bite me in the butt. Claire. His voice said softly. My body jerked forward of its own accord, causing me to gasp out in surprise. My hand reached for the door. I grew nervous. As soon as the only thing separating us was gone, I had no idea what I was going to do. Kieran knocked again. Open the door. It was as if he had given me an order, because I immediately did as he said. My hand twisted the bronze-colored knob, and threw open the door. Kieran stood before me with interchanging eye color. He was fighting his wolf too. He knew what could happen. He stepped forward and pulled me into his arms. They tightened around me possessively. I moaned at the electric current that passed through me at our touch. His lips brushed against my heated skin just over the claim. I moaned again, and clenched his toned arms that my hands rested upon. Better? He asked. I couldn't speak through my heavy breaths, so I nodded in response. I craved him more now than I did before. I tried to pull away from him, but my body wouldn't allow it, and neither would Kieran. He placed another gentle kiss on my neck, just enough to tease me and yearn for more. My legs weakened under me and gave way. Kieran held me firmly in his arms, keeping me from falling. Come back to bed. His soft and seductive tone broke down the last of my wall. I was suddenly putty in his hands. I fumbled for words. Yes? He questioned. Tell me what you want. I was well aware of what I wanted, and so was my wolf. Tell him. She urged. You? I want you, I answered. He seemed surprised by my words. You do. You're not fighting it anymore. I shook my head and tried to stand on my own again. No. It's a losing battle, and I will never win. So, with that revelation, Kieran, I surrender myself to you completely. I want you to mate me. His eyes darkened completely at my words and needed no more than that to whisk me to the bed, finish what we should have done a long time ago. I was soon to be a mated wolf. I gasped and sat up in bed abruptly. My chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, my body drenched in sweat. My clothes clung uncomfortable to my body. I felt strange and different somehow. I shifted in my mate's arms around my waist and faced him when everything that happened between us came rushing back to me. A startled cry escaped my lips. Kieran was quickly awoken. His eyes reflected panic. What's wrong? He asked. I tried to find my words, but failed miserably. Everything was one big jumble in my head, and I couldn't sort it all out. He sighed in relief when he realized I was physically okay. However, emotionally, I didn't even know the answer to that. Yes. We did, he said, answering my unasked question. We are fully mated now. The pride in his tone didn't go unnoticed. While he was sure about he felt about or mating, I was still conflicted. I wanted to be angry at myself for giving in to him so easily and at him for reasons unknown yet, but I couldn't. It was almost as if my mind and body refused to be angry at him or our mating. I couldn't believe how easy it was for him to break down my walls. No one had besides Daniel had ever gotten through them so easily. I shuddered at the thought of him in a bad way. I only thought of him in disgust now. What surprised me even more was that the thoughts of him and Jasmine together didn't bother me like they used to. Not even the slightest. It's better this way. The faint voice of my wolf spoke. We have a mate now. We are whole again. Her voice was more cheerful than it had been in the past, and I could almost feel her glowing. I rubbed the tiredness and sleep from my eyes and looked at the digital clock next to me on the stand. I was surprised to find it was 10:30 a.m. Kieran was never in bed at this hour. He hated to waste his day. "Shouldn't you be with the pack?" I asked him. He smiled and pulled me to his chest with his arms wrapped around my body. "No. I'm exactly where I need to be. But if you have to go, I don't want to keep you," I said. "I know you have duties." The thought of him leaving me pained me. I didn't want him to go, but I didn't want to force him to stay either. It wouldn't be fair. "Yes. I have duties as your mate as you do as mine. Let us just enjoy this for now." I smiled back at him at his reply. "Okay. I can do that." It's incredible at how much can be said with so little words. Even as we both sat there wrapped up in each other's arms, speechless, I could feel how elated my mate was. There was something much stronger and powerful between us, it was palpable. It radiated the room. "Do you feel it too?" I asked him. "Yes," he mumbled into my hair. "The pack can feel it too. They know we've mated. So that's why the pack hasn't bothered us this late in the day," I mumbled more to myself. Normally Wyatt or Leland would have come and gotten him for something by now. He's rarely ever still in bed past 9. Bothered us? He was amused by my choice of words. I blushed at how it sounded coming from him and felt bad. I didn't want him to think was bothersome. I loved them all. I just used a poor choice of words. I meant no one got us up early today, and you're still here. They always come to you for something. You're never here for long in the mornings if at all. He smiled. "Miss me, do you?" I blushed a deeper shade of red. "It's okay," he added. "I miss you too." I felt complete as I snuggled deep into Kieran's chest and sighed contently. He missed me. That brought a smile to my face. I was overwhelmed by a feeling that was completely new to me. My knight in shining armor had saved me in the best way possible, and though it was only now I was realizing all the reasons I loved him, I did. So much it scared me. My denial was done. The morning soon turned into the afternoon and Kieran could no longer avoid his alpha duties. He had to deal a problem that occurred overnight, that he was only recently informed of for obvious reasons. As soon as we were separated, my wolf started to despair. I had to remind her it was only temporary, and that we would be together again soon. I could also feel Kieran's wolf too, and he felt the same as mine. They longed for each other, and wouldn't be at ease until they were reunited again. We wanted our mate. Jennifer, Lana and I had spent most of the day by the lake while everyone else prepared for our departure to the night pack. Since my wolf was officially back, we all went for runs, and then decided to rest by the water for a while. It was fun letting my wolf again, but we were both missing Kieran too much to really enjoy it. He had been on edge all morning, which put my wolf on edge. An unknown she-wolf crossed over onto our land last night, and it had the whole pack on high alert. His wolf wasn't handling it well either. He saw her as a possible threat. "Go to him," my wolf urged. She was already picking up on what Kieran needed and yearned to satisfy him. She had definitely warmed up to my new mate, and she wanted to do everything she could to keep him happy. The mating does that to a wolf. "Who do you think she is?" Lana asked. I shrugged. "I don't know. There is only so much you can ask a person who doesn't even remember their own name. I just find it strange that she was wandering around in the woods all by herself." "Who does that?" "It's not safe," Jen added. "She was lost, that's the only explanation for it. But no one knows her and no packs are reporting her missing." "Where did she come from?" I asked. Lana pushed herself off the tree trunk and stood in front of us. Wyatt has been questioning her since she arrived. My dad said he'd never seen anyone look so lost before. He said he felt bad for her. He hopes Kieran can help her. My mate and the beater had been spending a lot of time with the unknown wolf, and though I know I had no reason to be worried, I was. I wasn't the only one who noticed how gorgeous the new she-wolf was. All the males did too. She definitely had good looks going for her. I know how males work. A beautiful, lost girl shows up out of nowhere with no one and doesn't remember anything. It tended to bring out the savior complex in the unmated males. She was mysterious and everyone wanted to know her. Wyatt's here, Lana announced, staring in the distance behind me. Jennifer and I both turned to confirm his presence, watching him until he reached us. I was the first one to speak to him. Hey. Hey, he greeted. Kieran wants to see you. My wolf perked up at that. Is he okay? I asked. Wyatt chuckled. Is he ever really okay? He's got a lot on his mind, but yes, physically he's fine. Then I better go, I stated. I turned to Lana and Jennifer before I left. I'll see you two later, okay? They both nodded and I quickly made my way back to the pack house, eager to be with my mate again. Kieran was not in his office when I arrived at the house, which sent me straight to our room. When I reached my destination, the door was closed, but I opened it and stepped inside. Our luggage was still on the floor next to the bed, where we had left it earlier, so it was clear no one had been here to remove them yet. I looked up just as the bathroom door opened to reveal a half-naked Kieran, and blushed at his state. You sent for me? I asked. Yes, he answered as he reached the closet. I wanted to see you. My wolf is upset. What's wrong? The she-wolf attacked me, he said. I began to panic and grew concerned. My eyes roamed over him to examine his body for bodily harm. What I could see, there was no markings on his body that indicated a scuffle, but that still didn't put my mind at ease. I'm already healed, he said. She got me good, but I'm all right. I'm an alpha. She was pretty strong though. She definitely had strength on her side. She seems to be more than just a she-wolf. I could hear the interest in her in his voice. Why did she attack you? I asked. He sipped his arms through the sleeves of his shirt and pulled it over his head before answering me. She's confused and doesn't understand anything. She doesn't understand why we are keeping her here, and wants to leave, but I can't allow that, so she got aggressive with me. I'm still not sure what we are going to do with her yet. She's under the care of Dr. Heath right now. He's giving her something to calm her down. She's been sedated. That must mean she's being treated as a psych patient. Kieran crossed the room and stood in front of me, placing his hands on my waist and dragging me into him. Me and my wolf missed you, he said, bringing his head forward to rest against mine. His green eyes bored into my blue ones with intensity. Things got serious quickly. My breathing picked up. Oh? His hands trailed up my sides until they reached my face and cupped it. You seemed oddly calm for someone who was just attacked, I noted with a heavy breath. That's because you're here. I sensed you almost as soon as you entered the house. His lips were nearly on mine now. Though the moment stirred some need in me, I still couldn't get that she-wolf out of my mind. She had attacked my mate and I was not okay with that. Immense feeling of anger arose in me that I was not familiar with, and I wanted to do something about it. Kieran's lips came down on mine, offering a temporary distraction for my disturbing thought of how I would make the new wolf pay for her actions. I was certain these feelings were not healthy, seeing as I was having a lot of trouble understanding them. Would Kieran? Perhaps I would pay a visit to Dr. Heath when I went to go visit our newest visitor. You're distracted, he said. His tone told me he was not pleased about that. By you, I lied. I quickly grabbed his shirt collar before he could respond and brought his lips back to mine. I didn't hold back this time. I gave him everything I had. My lips worked against his eagerly. He immediately responded by lifting me up so that I could wrap my legs around him, and stumbled backwards into the bed with me falling on top of him. We broke apart when we hit and I giggled. "It seems like days since I saw you last," he said. "I know," I agreed. "How long was it?" 4 hours. My eyes widened at my surprise. "That was all." "Well, then we better make up for lost time," I smirked. It was almost like I was a new person now. I was finding out things about myself that I hadn't discovered before. Like how much I loved doing a certain thing with my mate. And that I wasn't afraid of my inexperience when it came to him. Everything just came so natural between us. It was almost like we were really true mates. Being with Kieran had changed me in the best way. After we were getting dressed for a second time today, a knock came to our door. It was Wyatt with a message for Kieran. When he quickly excused himself, I decided on a shower. Though, what happened after I finished and joined my friends outside the mansion no one could have foreseen. Chapter 19. A few things happened when Kieran and I stepped outside the mansion to meet the rest of the pack. 1. There was a lot of growling coming for one specific person, who was dangerously close to shifting. 2. Everyone looked like they were about to attack him with teeth bared and in wolf form. And 3. That same specific wolf stood tall, dark, and possessive with my best friend wrapped in his arms. It only took me seconds to realize what was happening. I'd seen this same scene before. With mates. Kieran stood silently by me with an intense expression on his face. He seemed to be communicating a message to the pack to back off, because it was only seconds later they all stood down without hesitation. Felix really provoked them. Jennifer finally managed to smile at her mate after the surprise wore off that it was Felix who was holding her. With the pack calmed down, he looked at her with so much love the entire pack was able to feel it. And in that moment everyone and everything was at peace. Smiles started forming and spread to those around the loving mates. It was beautiful. Their love was infinite. And I was happy for them. My free-spirited friend was positively consumed by the presence of Felix. No one dared interrupt them. They were inside their own little world for the next few minutes, and finally they rejoined us in the real world again, Felix never releasing her once. "You need to confirm," Kieran said. Felix gazed at my mate before he gave him a quick nod and spoke. "Jennifer Burns is my mate and I will claim her by the full moon tomorrow night." Every wolf in the pack bowed their heads in respect at their pack member. All mates and matings were widely accepted and respected by all. By bowing their heads it showed Felix exactly that. When everyone's heads rose back up, Kieran gave his next order. "Shift and prepare to leave. We are due at Night Shadow Pack territory by sundown." Everyone knew it didn't look good for an alpha to be late to a meeting or gathering of any kind. It showed a weakness and therefore loss of respect among the pack and its wolves. It was something that no good alpha would ever allow to happen. As the pack quickly scattered and disappeared into the woods to change back into their human forms, Kieran led me to the vehicle prepared for us. Kieran climbed in after me. When the new mates lingered behind, staying rooted in their spots, it puzzled me. Weren't they coming with Iz? Felix is one of the best fighters in the pack. Felix turned Jennifer around and walked her toward the house, soon disappearing inside. "You discharged Felix?" Kieran nodded. "I think it was necessary given the circumstances. He plans to mark and possibly mate your best friend by the next full moon, and we won't be back by then. Seeing as the marking can be incredibly painful for some wolves, I thought it would be better if they stayed here. But who will replace him?" I linked Chance and Dorian and recruited them when Felix and Jennifer were confirmed mates. They, along with Leland, will be with us the whole time we are at Night Shadow. Everyone else will scope out their territory and keep an eye on things for us. I didn't miss how curt he was being with me. You can talk to me, you know, I reminded him. If there's something's wrong, why would something be wrong? I shrugged. I don't know. You just seem different. I wanted to ask him if something had changed, but I already knew the answer to that without asking. I wondered if that was what was bothering him. Felix is a good friend and fighter to Kieran. Maybe he felt like we were at a disadvantage now. I don't like when things change, he said. When I make plans, I intend them to be followed through with. So I was right. He was worried. I could feel it in his words when he spoke. My tough alpha mate was actually troubled for once. It takes two of my best fighters just to replace Felix. He's indispensable. But won't you feel better he's here looking out for the pack while we are gone? He's still an advantage even if he's not with us. He seemed to consider my words before visibly relaxing a little. His tough exterior began to soften again. He is, he agreed. He wrapped his arm around my back and pulled me into him. I rested my head on his shoulder. And you're right. That's why you make such a great Luna. You always see the good in every situation. Well, most of them. Some of them were absent of anything good. Some that I will not mention. His face dropped down and his lips met mine. They were warm and soft, then became something more. Something that could only be finished when we were alone. When the wolves returned from the woods, they poured into the vehicles. All of them were at maximum capacity. Kieran wasn't taking any chances that something might go wrong. Though I believed his methods for our protection were a bit extreme, he was a good alpha. We disagreed when it came to my old pack. Even though I believed they wouldn't attack us, he wouldn't rule out any possibility. Ultimately, it was his decision that mattered, and I trusted it completely. Our SUV rolled into Blue Water Motel. It was the only place in my small town that an outside traveler could stay when passing through town. It wasn't very new and somewhat run down, but it was a roof over our heads. Though, most of the pack would probably prefer to sleep in their wolf forms on the cold, hard ground. Any place nicer than Blue Water Motel to stay was in the next town over. Redwood had a couple of nice hotels and even some cabins down by the lake. I had only stayed there once with Jennifer for our high school graduation party. I don't remember most of it though. It was the first and only time I ever drank alcohol. Dorian went inside the motel office to get us our rooms and returned with 10 keys for the 10 rooms they had. Our pack was filling their vacancy for the night, and I'm sure they were appreciative of the business. I blushed when he handed Kieran and I the key to the honeymoon suite. It was embarrassing knowing that Dorian assumed we'd want it. Maybe it was because it was the nicest room in the place. Thanks, I muttered as I accepted the key and quickly headed towards the motel. I didn't linger. The moment was awkward enough as it was. Though, as always, Dorian showed no emotion. He was one closed book. I still didn't know how Kieran exacted us to be friends. It seemed very unlikely. When I opened the door to our room, Kieran joined me inside. He did a quick assessment of our environment and remained silent. No doubt he was used to staying in much nicer places. He just looked so out of place here. My eyes began to wander around the room, studying all that it held. It included a king-sized bed with a red comforter and matching pillows, one dresser and mirror, one picture on the pale yellow walls, a table with 2 chairs and a phone, one box TV with a rabbit ear antenna, and a bathroom. No. He definitely did not belong. I picked up the remote, turned on TV. Some missing persons report was on the news, but neither of us paid much attention to it as we settled into the room. After we finished, Kieran went over the plan for tomorrow and asked me to phone the Alpha of Night Shadow. There had to be some terms set before we stepped foot on the territory tomorrow. When Kieran took the phone from me to speak to him, I grabbed the ice bucket from the dresser and went to find the ice machine. Most everyone seemed to already be inside their rooms besides the wolves that were assigned to keep a watch over the night. No one noticed me leave my room until I reached the machine at the end of the corridor. Dorian stood guard. "Luna," he greeted. "Dorian." He remained quiet as I began filling the ice bucket with frozen chips. When the machine stopped before it was full, I cursed it and gave it a swift kick. After I returned to the room with the bucket half full, Kieran was out of the bathroom and sitting in one of the wooden chairs by the window watching TV. I sat the bucket down in the dresser and grabbed one of the plastic-wrapped cups beside it and emptied some ice into my cup. I sat next to Kieran and began crunching on it. He slowly turned from the TV and a grin began to form on his face. It was the first time he had smiled since leaving our territory. "Keely loves ice chips too," he said. "You must miss her." "I worry. I don't know if my aunt and uncle can handle her while we're gone. They'd let her get away with murder." I giggled and it felt nice. "Let's hope it don't come to that." He reached across the table and ran his hand through my hair, his eyes mirroring what I felt love. He was really happy and I did that, just like he did the same for me. I was just waiting for the right time to tell him. "How are things with the pack? Did you call Wyatt?" I asked him. He yawned, removed his hand from my hair and nodded. "He has things under control. He's been questioning the she-wolf again." Worry for my friend rose within me. If she was going to attack Kieran, an alpha, she wouldn't think twice about attacking Wyatt. Is that really safe? It's his job. Someone has to do it. I suppose he was right, but that didn't make me feel any better about it. As far as I was concerned, she was still dangerous. I hope he's careful. He's dealt with the violent types before. He knows what he's doing. I hope he is right. Kieran and I soon went to bed. Then, before we knew it, we were waking up and were on our way to Night Shadow. When we passed by the cafe I used to work at, what used to be my life, I realized how much I missed it. Not the work so much, but the customers and my co-workers. Everything was just so different now than it was then. That was another life. Same feelings arose when we later passed my old college campus. I had a lot of memories there too. We finally arrived at my parents' house where Alpha Robert was waiting to greet us a little after 10 a.m. My mom and dad, along with other important wolves from the pack, were there to greet us as well. Both the alphas bowed their heads at each other in mutual respect, as did the packs. There was a short silence between them until my mom smiled and said my name. She ran from the house and enclosed me into a tight hug. It felt like I hadn't seen her in ages. I missed her. From the house my dad smiled and waved to us. I could tell he missed me too, but he was trying to remain cool and reserved in front of his alpha. When Mom released me and bowed her head to Kieran. "It's good to see you again, Kieran." "You too, Mrs. Warren." "Call me Patricia," she said. My eyes drifted over everyone gathered in front of my house, as my mom strolled me past them, with her arm around me and entered into the house. Once everyone was inside I noticed that of all the people there Daniel was not one among them. Strangely that didn't seem to bother me. The mating had done its job. Alpha Robert had a sad expression on his face, as did the other wolves. My mom patted my shoulder softly giving us the floor. Chance, Dorian, and Leland kept a close distance to me and Kieran, being no further than arm's length. They took their security detail very seriously. "Thank you for coming." The silence inside the room broke, as Alpha Robert began to speak. "You'll have to forgive me if I'm not in the best of spirits. There have been some things happen in the pack recently, and we are all a little worried. We remained silent, as he continued to explain. As you already know, Jasmine and Daniel are expecting their first pup in the fall, he reminded me. I nodded. Jasmine nearly lost the baby early yesterday morning. She's been put on bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy. They don't know if the pup will survive. I let out a breath of surprise. I'm so sorry. I looked to Kieran in sadness and guilt. We both knew the reason Jasmine almost lost her baby. It was us. We caused it. We completed the mating process. They must have felt everything. I know I have no right to ask this of you, but I was hoping you could talk to him. He's not been the same since it happened. I felt Kieran tense at his request, and his wolf was dangerously close to surfacing. I reached out and touched his hand to calm him down, and it worked. He instantly calmed. I'm not sure what I can do, but I'll try. The words slipped from my lips hesitantly. It wasn't that I owed Daniel anything anymore, but if consoling him after the near loss of his child was what was asked of me, I could do that. I wasn't heartless regardless of what he had done to me in the past. I was a better person than that. Thank you, he said. I expect now you'd like to get down to business considering your journey. Kieran nodded, his voice was hard when he spoke. We would. Alpha Robert understood Kieran's stiff reply and didn't dwell on it. Not that anyone facing Kieran would. He was an intimidating alpha when he wanted to be. We've been having some trouble with another pack. They've been making some threats for a few months now and dash. I frowned. I had been here months ago. No one ever mentioned a threat. Since when? Alpha Robert didn't seem to appreciate my disrespect, and the beta growled at me. Before he could have punished me for talking out of line, but now I was not longer part of his pack, and he couldn't do anything without causing a fight between packs. I had a feeling they wouldn't be able to handle that on top of the threats from another pack. It was Memorial Day, he answered. We haven't told the pack yet. We don't want them to worry. I narrowed my eyes at him. Don't you feel like they deserve to know? To keep their children safe. We are keeping them safe, he stated. We have wolves on patrol 24 hours a day. And what if that doesn't work? I asked. What if they're stronger and bigger than Night Pack, and you can't protect everyone? They'll be furious to know you kept them in the dark. I run this pack as I see fit. His voice rose a bit with his words. Kieran and our pack growled at his tone, which caused Night Pack to growl in return. You will not take that tone with my mate and the Luna of this pack. If you want help from our pack, that is not the way to do it. We demand respect. Robert immediately bowed his head out of respect and fear of my mate. It surprised me to see him so weak. Of course. I'm sorry. I was proud of Kieran for taking control and standing up for me. He's exactly what a mate should be, and I was lucky to have him. I squeezed his hand in mine. When Robert raised his head again, I felt confident to continue. Do you know why our pack is so strong? It's because we don't keep secrets from each other. They make us weak. We believe in total disclosure. You're not truly a pack until you come together as one and work toward the same goal. If your pack finds out what you've done, you'll lose respect among them, and I assume that's not something you can afford. You need unity. His lips formed a thin line. I'm aware of my mistakes. If I had known the threats would have progressed this far, I would have done things differently. They are coming for us. What pack is making the threats? Kieran asked. The underground pack. Are you familiar with it? Kieran tensed again. Anger radiated off of him so much he could barely speak. I thought he might shift. His voice came out low and dark. I know them. They attacked us a few years ago. Then you know they should be taken seriously, Robert said. A few months ago, they tried to get us to join them in their plan to take over other packs. When we refused, that's when the threat started. If we don't give them our loyalty, they will attack in less than a month. That's a shame. If you had come to us sooner, we have been able to do something. Now it may be too late. If word got around that your pack was protecting us now, they may leave us alone. Robert sounded desperate. No. Our pack alone won't scare them. It would take many of us. More packs. More alliances. Kieran knew them well, and know how to deal with them. They crossed his radar so many years ago. He knew what to expect from them. Robert shook his head. He would not accept defeat. Surely you must have some connections with other packs. I do, Kieran said. But I still have to go through the proper procedures to get their help. I don't know if there is enough time to get the help that's required. If it's one thing I know about the underground pack, is that they are planning something big. Axel won't make the mistake of being unprepared this time. Robert was speechless and, even though he'd never admit it, shaken. He now knew what they were capable of. Kieran saw his fear. I'll see what I can do, but I will make no promises. I'll be in touch. I knew Kieran would come through for them. Even though he had little respect for my former alpha, he knew that I still had people here that meant something to me, and wouldn't let them fail. Robert seemed visibly at ease the second the words left my mate's mouth. Again he bowed in respect. Thank you. It couldn't have been easy for Alpha Robert to admit he needed help, and I had to admit it felt nice to see him grovel a little. His days of holding himself high above everyone else had finally came to an end. Kieran went into action as soon as the Alpha left my parents' house, and called a meeting to the pack that traveled with us. We met in the woods where I once got lost a few months ago, when I ran from Daniel. He gave out orders to the wolves he needed to do something and explained his plan for helping Night Pack. When he was finished he called Wyatt and arranged for him to call the packs we had alliances with and set up times for us to meet with them as soon as we returned home. Kieran wanted to leave as soon as possible, so we agreed to leave out early tomorrow morning. We had a lot of stuff to do. Chapter 20. Kieran and I decided to grab some lunch before we went back to Night Shadow Pack and met with Daniel. Kieran hadn't said anything about it since we left Robert and his pack. I had a feeling it wouldn't be long though. He still seemed tense and unsettled. We sat in a round corner booth, in the old diner I used to work in, that could fit most of our pack. The remainder of them took up the table next to us and nearly filled it. I glanced around my familiar workplace and smiled, a sense of nostalgia taking over. Although I don't miss my pack life, I did miss it here. My job wasn't too bad most of the time. In fact, I enjoyed it when a few of my other co-workers stayed late to help close up, and we'd switch on the old jukebox and play some of the classic songs it held and clean the place. I also enjoyed it when Charlie let us eat all the leftover sweets, or take them home with us. I always had a sweet tooth and the extra cake and pies spoiled me. For most wolves, we try our best to eat healthy. With a controlled diet and lots of exercise, we are an unstoppable force. I wasn't the best at eating healthy, but I needed to start. I know I'd feel much better if I did. My life here seems like a lifetime ago now. When Andrea brought our food over and placed it on the table, she grinned at me. We'd talked briefly when she was taking our orders earlier, but I could tell she was a little intimidated by all the testosterone in the room. I'm sure she had a lot of questions. I could see them in her eyes. Her eyes flashed around the tables at each one of the guys, and then she fanned herself in a dramatic way when they weren't looking. She then pointed at Kieran and gave me huge thumbs up. I tried very hard not to laugh at her. When she left and disappeared into the back, she appeared at the door seconds later with my other co-worker Celeste. They were both talking and staring at the table. I suppose they were wondering how I ended up traveling with crowd of hot guys. If I were them, I guess I'd be curious too. I still have some business to take care of with the other packs, Kieran said, snapping out of my thoughts. I have to call Clint back and discuss a time that would be best to visit him. My eyebrows rose at the news. It was the first I was hearing about it. We are visiting him. He nodded. He came to us last time, so I thought this time we'd go to him. I thought you might like a change of scenery. It's nice there. I used to spend a lot of time on his property when he was mentoring me. His land is a lot bigger than mine, and I know you like to roam. It's true. I did like Rome. I'm sure he remembered after I disappeared into the woods on my second day in Perilous Pack. Everyone was worried. I can still see how worried and upset he had been in my mind. It sounds nice. I would love to visit them, I smiled. I'd like to Kaylin again too. She's been asking about you. She'll be pleased to know we are coming. He dug into his food and a comfortable settled between us. Leland sat across from me eyeing Celeste and Andrea as he ate, then glanced at me. He motioned his head in their direction and I shook mine. I knew what he was asking. Are they single and do they know about us? It's frowned upon for a werewolf to pursue any kind of a relationship with a human. Not forbidden, but the elder werewolves object to it. It puts us at risk of being discovered and drawing attention to ourselves. If a human happens to be our mate, then it's acceptable because the relationship can be predicted. They are forever tied together, so the risk is minimal. If it's a non-mated relationship, it can go anywhere and turn out any way. It's too dangerous for both the werewolf and human. Even friendships are not well accepted. That's why I never hung out with my co-workers outside of work. I couldn't bring them into my life and risk them getting hurt or seeing something they are not supposed to. If that were to happen, they'd simply disappear. They're werewolves who took care of those problems. They wouldn't risk anything. Leland looked slightly disappointed and went back to his food with a frown. He was funny when he pouted. I hoped he found his mate soon. He was 24 and according to him, too long to wait for his mate. He was growing impatient. I knew how he felt. Everyone looked forward to meeting their mate as soon as they turned 21. I did. I don't know if I can go with you, Kieran said after we finished our food and left the diner. We were on our way back to the pack and Kieran was stiff. I don't think I can be in the same room as him and not want to kill him. He didn't sound bitter anymore over his mate because he'd moved on from it like I had, but he still didn't like Daniel. He found him too weak to be an alpha, and he didn't trust him. He'd told me that a few times during our travel. It's okay if you don't want to go. I'll be fine on my own, I said. He was quick to reply. No. I don't want you alone with him. You should take someone from the pack with you. It's really okay. He's too emotionally unstable to be any risk or harm to me. Claire. His tone was a warning not to argue with him on the subject. He never tried to tell me what to do, and if he did insist on something it's because he felt strongly about it and felt it was necessary. In cases like that I didn't argue with him. I'll send Dorian with you. I slowly let my eye drift to him sitting in the passenger seat of the SUV, and he remained emotionless to Kieran's request. He didn't object and accepted her choice completely. He never argued with Kieran's decisions. No one did. Some offered other suggestions, but no one refused to do what he asked. I leaned in closer to Kieran so that only he could hear me. I can take Leland, I whispered. Dorian made the slightest movement, and I know he heard me. Being without most of my abilities, for a short time, made me forget that werewolves could hear even the slightest of sounds. Guilt settled over me. I hope I didn't make him feel bad. That is if he felt anything at all. You promised, he reminded me. Remember? I took in a deep breath and nodded. Yes. I did remember. I said I would try with Dorian. I knew he didn't like me that much, but I was doing it for Kieran. I just hoped he might have forgotten about it. Okay. I'll go with Dorian. I tried to sound happy about it and hoped it came out in my voice. I didn't want to make him think I disliked him, as much as he seemed to dislike me. We arrived at my parents' house again, but this time Alpha Robert was gone and no one was there except for my mom and dad. Alpha Robert called my dad while we were at the diner and told him to tell me Daniel was at the usual place, and I knew where he meant. It was the small clearing in the woods that was still close to the community that people often visited to relax or just get away for a few minutes. Some of the she-wolves decorated it up with a couple of benches and a wooden swing that hung from the tree with rope. The kids enjoyed it when their parents would visit. It was peaceful there. Dorian and I left soon after I received the message. Kieran was still uneasy about letting me go. If it wasn't that he trusted Dorian, he may have refused it altogether. He walked side by side into the community of houses in silence. Neither of us offered up any kind of conversation. I felt small talk was more awkward than the silence and must have felt the same. Once we reached the other side of the houses, we started into the woods. A few steps in, I nearly slipped and fell on a large branch that had fallen from a tree, and was surprised the Dorian caught my arm and kept me from hitting the ground. As soon as I was stable again, he let go like he'd been griping fire and couldn't wait to release me. Thanks, I mumbled. He didn't even reply. With a simple nod he continued to walk. I frowned. We walked a few minutes more, and the clearing was nearly visible now. When he stopped, I stopped with him and he faced me. I'll give you two some space. I'll keep close by in the woods and keep my sights on you. Not even a second later he disappeared into the woods with not as much as a sound from his feet. Keep my sights on you. The words echoed in my head. Was that supposed to be a warning or words of comfort? I couldn't be sure. His voice didn't give anything away. Dorian was a puzzle I had yet to figure out, and I wasn't sure I ever would. I continued in the direction of the clearing until it was fully visible now, and my eye immediately fell on him. Daniel. He was the only one there, and he seemed to be slipping back into his human form, because he was tugging his shirt back over his head when I arrived. His back was to me, but wolves could sense anything around them without ever seeing it. He tensed a little and straightened out his shirt. I'm surprised to see you here, he said, turning to face me, his face impassive. I didn't think you'd ever come back here. I kept my distance and replied. Me either. I guess we are both surprised. He walked barefoot to one of the benches in the grass and sat down. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. He stared out into the open and remained silent. Unsure of what to do, I took slow, steady steps toward him, careful of getting too close. Things were still as complicated as the day I left him here. He was still a stranger to me and I didn't know how to approach him. Sure, we'd kissed and I had been his mate at one time, but did I ever really know him? I don't think I did. You weren't supposed to let things like that bother you when you were mates. Things just happened, fell into place, and you accepted them with condition. But now that we were not mates anymore, it seemed much more obvious how much of strangers we really were. I studied him for a moment. Picking out the things that were different about him now than when I left, they were understandably visible. He looked more tired and worn out. His appearance uncharacteristically rugged. His eyes were more sunken in than I remember, and the halo around his head created by the light and blonde color of his hair was gone now. He was worn. Spent. Emotionally and physically. I shook my head and stepped a little closer to him. I'm sorry about what happened. Jasmine. Is she? I cut off, not know how to continue. How does one ask about the person your mate left you for? He didn't speak for a long moment, and for a second I doubted he would. When he finally did, it sounded bitter, angry. Is that why you're here? To offer me your pity? If it is, you can save it. I don't want or need it. He didn't keep the harshness out of his words. His tone wounded me a little, to my surprise. I wasn't used to this side of Daniel. He was usually calm and composed. Even when he was alpha. He never snapped at anyone. Not even at me the night I ran from him. He was upset, but he never let it consume him this way. It was clear he was dealing with something much deeper now. He had a certain darkness about him that radiated through the air, and I could feel it. It worried me and scared me all at the same time. Maybe it was a bad idea to come here after all. Unconsciously I took a step back, and he noticed. His head snapped to me and his dark orb stared at me so hard I thought he was trying to see through me. You're worried, he said. You don't trust me. Though what he said was supposed to be a question, I'm not so sure it was. I didn't know how to answer at first, and it took me a minute to think about it. He didn't seem bothered by the silence. In fact, it was almost as if he expected it. Why would you say that? I asked him. He never broke his gaze. His eyes stayed on me as he spoke. That's why you came with a bodyguard, isn't it? You didn't know what to expect from me. I didn't lie. That wasn't my idea. But it shouldn't surprise you that I did. You wouldn't go into enemy territory without some protection, would you? He was surprised. Enemy territory. Is that what we are? Without hesitation I said, well, we aren't exactly allies now, are we? Our packs were working toward that, but it has yet to be proven it can be done. Some pack just couldn't cooperate with each other no matter what. We could very well be those packs if we weren't careful. He didn't reply nor look away. I was starting to feel uncomfortable under his gaze. I soon found myself looking around the green forest for any sign of Dorian. As strange as it was, that would comfort me here. Daniel stood up from the bench and pushed his hands into his pant pockets. He faced me and thankfully didn't make a move in my direction. When did you get in? He asked me, seeming a little more like Daniel again. How long would it last though? Alpha Robert had been right in his words earlier. Daniel wasn't the same anymore. This that had happened changed him. And not for the better. We got in last night, I said, trying to make my voice stand out above the loud chirping of a few passing birds. He's here too, he said, and this time I knew it was a statement and who he meant. Yes. Robert needed to discuss some business with us, and we came back to get my parents. They'll be staying with us for a while. Something seemed to pass over his features. My father agreed to this. I nodded. It was one of our conditions if we listened to him. He quoted me. Listen to you. You grew right into your position, didn't you, Luna? I could tell if he was mocking or trying to make conversation, but I went with it. Well, it is what I was born to do. And it was. It was Daniel who thought I wasn't good enough for the job. Or him. I'm not bitter about it anymore. It's just recognition of that fact. I hoped now he realized how wrong he was and will be slow to speak in the future. As an alpha, he should think things through a little more carefully. If not, it might get him in trouble. That you were, he agreed. The silence between us grew again, and I was beginning to see I was getting nowhere with him. I came to offer my regret over what happened, though he doesn't seem to want to talk about it. It's perfectly understandable. I just wanted to come by and say I'm sorry for what happened. I hope Jasmine and the baby is all right. I started to turn and walk away, but then I stopped myself and glanced back at him. And you? I hope you will be okay too. This time I did walked away, back towards the way we came and out of the clearing, and then his cold, hard voice stopped me in my tracks. It was almost as if winter had coated the forest from his words. A chill went up my spine. "You should be sorry," he said. "You were the one who caused it to happen." I wasn't surprised he blamed me. That would explain his cold nature. I didn't want anyone to get hurt, especially an innocent child. I didn't think it would affect either of you very much since you were the ones who rejected us. You did it first. You caused the most damage. We were the ones who suffered the worst of it. Or so we thought. It's my fault too, he added as if he hadn't even heard me speak. If I had properly let you go, then we could have all moved on. That's why you suffered so much, and it's why Jasmine is too. What? The words barely audible. I wasn't even sure if I had said them aloud. I stared down at the ground as I tried to process what he was saying. He didn't let me go properly. What does that even mean? But most of all, it's his fault. His voice was a little rougher now. More angry. Jasmine was pregnant, but it was my father who pushed our mating. He was the one who told me I had responsibilities now, and I had to put them first. As angry as I was at Robert for encouraging his relationship with Jasmine after he found me, I really couldn't bring myself to hate over that now. He was right. Daniel did, and still does, have a responsibility to her. It's his child she's carrying. And you did. I don't fault you for that now. If I did, I wouldn't have Kieran. He's the best thing that came from everything bad and terrible that happened. It led me to him. You should. But I think I know why you don't. There was a certain edge to his words. His eyes were hardened. And she didn't go down today. It happened weeks ago. She would have died soon anyway, but you just sped up the process. I guess I should be thanking you. You put her out of her suffering. Suffering? Was she dead? Did I kill her? And he took everything from me, he continued. You. My pack. My position. Suddenly I realized what he was doing now. He's trying to find someone to blame. Someone to hold responsible for everything. Anyone besides placing everything on himself. He can't take the guilt. I had no idea how to help him. Things like that didn't come naturally to me anymore toward him. He wasn't my mate. But I tried anyway. Look, I begin. You can't hold on to guilt or place blame. It will eat alive and consume you until there's nothing left. Don't let do that to you. You still have Jasmine and your baby. It's not over yet. You'll get your position back when everything is back to normal. He shook his head and let out a dark and humorless laugh. But don't you see? Nothing will ever go back to normal. It can never be. Something is coming, and it's bigger than you or me. When it gets here, everything will change. We need a change. I crunched my brows in confusion. I don't understand. What do you mean? You'll see. You'll have your chance to join. Suddenly realization dawned on me and I gasped. Oh God. No, Daniel. Tell me you didn't. The Alpha's words came back to me in a rush. A few months ago, they tried to get us to join them in their plan to take over other packs. When we refused, that's when the threat started. If we don't give them our loyalty, they will attack in a matter of weeks. My head was spinning. No. He couldn't have. I know Daniel was bitter about everything, but he wouldn't do this, would he? I slowly backed up and began looking around. Where the hell is Dorian? Kieran. Kieran. I called through our link. I was only graced with silence. My heart sank. I tried again. Kieran. Nothing. No. No. This isn't good. Something is wrong here. Kieran, where are you? Why can't you hear me? My voice rose as I tried to speak again. I didn't want him to know I was contacting Kieran. Daniel, I understand that things are bad right now, but this is not the answer. My heart was pounding in my chest and ears. I knew something wasn't right. I could feel it when I first saw him. Why did I ignore it? I should have run. He took long, quick strides toward me, and that's when I lost the grip on myself and I shouted. Dorian! Dorian! Daniel was in front of me within seconds. I had to shift. Right here. Right now. My mind had been so overwhelmed I didn't even think to do that first. But where was Dorian? Did something happen to him? Or worse? Was this a setup? Was he working for them too? No. He wouldn't betray Kieran. But then again, I never thought Daniel would be a traitor either. I started to shake as he reached for me. I was slowly losing control of myself. This shift was not happening as fast as I wanted. Those couple of months without shifting was hurting me now. Please, I begged my wolf. Please. I wouldn't do that if I were you, he warned. Not if you want your friend out there to live. His nails dug into the skin on my shoulders. If it weren't for the adrenaline running through my veins, I might have flinched a little. What have you done? I asked him. You don't kill people. Think of Jasmine. Think of your baby. You'll kill them. It's too late for that. They are gone now. I shook my head in disbelief. No. You're wrong. Robert said he didn't know then. It only happened after you left. So that's what he meant. I sped up the process. The mating killed her sooner than she was supposed to go. Why didn't Robert tell us? That's why he sent you out here, isn't it? To help me. To bring me back to myself. He thought I'd lose it. His grip didn't tighten or loosen. He just held me there in front of him. I didn't bother to struggle out of his grip. I knew it would be futile. Grief makes us do crazy things sometimes. But this is wrong. Do you even know Axel, or the underground pack? Do you know what he's capable of? He's out for blood, Daniel. Do you understand what that means? He'll kill anyone and everyone you've ever thought about. Not if they cooperate. His hands slid down my shoulders a little, almost reaching my elbows. I started to move back until I saw a black shadow step out of the trees a few feet from us. The feel of his presence alone told me exactly who he was, even though I'd never seen the person before. He was dark, brooding, and powerful. Axel. Out for blood, he quoted me. My. It seems my reputation has preceded me. My scalp tingled with the need to shift. I had to get out of here. I had to warn Kieran and both packs. They had to know what Daniel was doing. I spat. You are responsible for all of this. For Daniel. For the deaths of Kieran's parents. The attacks on all the other pack. You leave a trail of bodies and destruction in your wake. She's quite a fireball, he said to Daniel, his jaw set in amusement. We could use her. Use me? No. Never. You'd have to kill me first. I made my voice as low and dangerous as I could manage. They both laughed at me as I had told a joke. Then Axel spoke again. That's not necessary. We have other ways to make you cooperate with us. Us? So what, you're a team now? You dragged him into this. He turned to Daniel and smiled. You didn't tell her. Well, this is amusing. What exactly do you want with me? I asked impatiently. I'm sure you can find other willing wolves to join your League of Evil. Axel turned back to me. He was no longer smiling, but serious. Because you're an asset. If we have you, we can ensure Kieran will work with us. Then he turned to Daniel. And he thinks you'll eventually come around and help us too. I gaped at him. He really thinks I'd help them. He really is gone. You're delusional. Both of you. And what have you done to Dorian? Did you kill him like you did everyone else? Contrary to what you think, I don't kill without reason. He did nothing, so he's still alive. He'll wake up in an hour and by then we'll all be gone. No? I tried to jerk out Daniel's hold. Like I knew it would be, it was pointless. What if Kieran would have been here with me? Would they have hurt him? Would they have kidnapped him too? We were outnumbered. Axel wouldn't have came here alone. This kind of works out perfect when I think about it. Daniel spoke this time. The day Jasmine died, the day I was leaving, you show up. You cut our work in half. We thought we were going to have to fight through half your pack to get to you. You've made it so much easier. I nearly dropped to the ground. He was right. I had made it easy. And I had sorely underestimated what Daniel was capable of. I was convinced he was just hurt and grieving. I guess in a way he still is. I can't replace what you've lost, I said to Daniel. I can't make all this better. Only time can do that. You're dealing with resentment and loss. It's a lethal combination. You're not thinking. But I am, he said. We have a way to fix everything. You'll see. Come on, Axel said, facing the trees. She's been gone a while. They'll start looking for her soon. We need to get her underground. We can talk more there. No, I protested again. If someone sees you, you'll never be able to get away with this. The pack is bigger than the two of you. No one answered. Daniel spun me around and forced me to follow after Axel. His hand gripped my arm firmly. We walked the opposite direction of the pack community into part of the forest I didn't even know. And I had been a pack member here once. Soon a large number of wolves surrounded us. Some had shifted and some had not. They were large, intimidating. You got her, one of them said. And here I thought she would run, and we would have to take her down. I swallowed at that. Take me down. Just to knock you out, he clarified. He read my expression. So maybe it's best I didn't run when I could have. They would have caught me anyway. And then I'd be unconscious. You'll have to do that anyway, Axel told him. We can't have her knowing where headquarters is. We have to trust her first. Then we'll move her to the house. I won't make that mistake again. This one won't escape. An unnamed guy moved toward me, but I was too wrapped up in my thoughts to even move. Not that it would matter. Jennifer, I thought. They must mean her. She said she escaped from a house. And Axel was there. The house is where they held her and Tobias. We have him. Are they going to go after him too? Try to get him. A pinch on my neck sent me spinning. I felt weak and tired. The feeling only lasted a second though, and almost as soon as it came it was gone and I was spinning into a deep, dark oblivion heading nowhere. Don't get left behind in the chase for independence. Hit subscribe and ring the bell for alerts on the next adventure.